Hey everyone, Xandar here, and this is the Informative Podcast. This podcast won an award in 2022 for being the best podcast in the world. Why? Because we talk about things. We talk about everything. We talk about topics that are difficult to talk about. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Today's the final episode of the year, and we thought we should make this one special. So we're going to talk about something that no one else has ever talked about. And for this very reason, I've invited one of the bravest young men I know, Mr. Osama. Osama, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Zen. Thanks so much for having me back, actually. Oops.
Yeah, this is all, you've been here before, so
Yeah.
you know how this goes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was so honored to be here the first time, and I'm honored to be invited back. I think this is just something really powerful that you're doing here. But yeah, no, I think it's like really amazing that there's actually a platform to have conversations like this, because like you said, no one else is really talking about this stuff, and we need to have, I think, people willing to actually discuss this stuff. It's such a saturated space, and there's so many voices right now. And for us to be able to cut through the cheese and just kind of get to the meat of the issue is just really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as many of, I guess, this podcast viewers know, we're usually constricted to a 30-second format, but I've specifically asked the producers for today's specific episode to give us a full hour of time to actually get through the topic that we want to get through today. So no, we won't be cutting off at 30 seconds, and we'll actually talk about, topics that are, I guess, very important to talk about.
I think we have a multitude of topics to go over today. Yeah. I mean, we're kind of looking back on the year, right? We're looking back on this past year, and we're looking over, and we're not just restricting ourselves to one, mode of discussion.
Yeah.
And I think it's amazing that you're able to get those time restrictions lifted, because now we can just really go into depth about everything and just really have a hefty discourse here.
But that being said, there's one thing that happened that I guess we all have to talk about. And I was sitting up in my bed last night because I couldn't sleep.
Yeah, same. Yeah. No, yeah.
I couldn't. I kept thinking about this specific topic and how I'm going to come on this podcast today and talk about it, and what I'm going to say about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I took notes in my moleskin, and I just thought, you know what? This is why I do this. Yeah.
So, obviously we discussed beforehand what we're going to talk about, and similar to you, kind of restless last night, tossing and turning. And then I do what I always do when I get into that headspace. I just started journaling, and so I kind of woke up and I was thinking about what we had discussed. We kind of talked earlier about generally what we were going to discuss today, and I started jotting down some ideas, jotting down some notes, and then I realized I think I need to take a step back. I think I just need to approach this honestly and earnestly, and it's okay to feel what I'm feeling. So no, I just meditated for a little while, and I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to wake up. Let me get some sleep.
Yeah.
That's so important. And then we're going to battle this in the morning, and I'm going to approach it with a fresh mind. And it's okay if it's not it's such a heavy topic, and the fact that we're even attempting this, I think that's worth that's worthwhile.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And like yourself, I barely got any sleep last night. This morning, I woke up regularly how I wake up at 4 a.m.
Oh.
I
you
meditated.
Slept in?
Yeah. Actually, just a bit, I guess. Meditated, prayed, read, the 4 books that I read every morning. And, that's just me as a productive person.
Yeah.
I have to be moving and reading every day and just informing myself to better inform my viewers.
I do want to just say something there, because I've actually kind of moved into a post-productivity mindset.
Wow.
Because I used to be a productivity animal, just hustling, grinding all the time. So now I feel like I need to, I realized that my priorities were out of line, and I wasn't putting my mental and my spiritual, where they needed to be in that order. It was always work, work, work. So now, like this morning, for example, I actually slept in and I woke up at 3:30 a.m. You know, just hitting the snooze button type of thing, right? Yeah. So I woke up like 3:30 or something. You know, just spamming the snooze button. I read like I usually read like I used to back in the day I'd read so many books, but now I'm like reading like just like four maybe 4 or 5 a day.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, but that's so important too because it's like okay, that actually gives me time to to journal, to meditate, to spend time with my loved ones, to just to take care of myself, really. And that's something that's so neglected in our hyper-capitalistic society, which is, I think, just kind of leading us into the topic that we said we were going to discuss today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you saying hyper-capitalistic, do you see what happened with, Boxing Day and Black Friday?
Yeah.
It's like, we don't even know what to buy anymore because there's so much stuff to buy.
Yeah, it's like the one thing that we can't buy.
It's time.
Is time. It's mental health, really. It's actually peace. I feel like that's the one thing I can't buy.
No, absolutely.
Is just inner peace and just like kind of like finding that equilibrium.
Yeah.
Which it's so elusive, you know, because we get so wrapped up in the day to day. We get so wrapped up in like the corporate holidays.
Yeah.
Like really, I think Christmas should be canceled.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And this is so important, and it's so relevant to the topic that we want to talk about today.
Yeah.
And
can I just warn all the listeners, like this is not an easy topic. This is not something to, scoff at, to take lightly, which is why we actually, allotted the time to actually, dive deep and get into this and break this down because it's not something that's easy to talk about.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I was so happy that our producers let us have this entire time slot to actually talk about this.
And I do want to put forth a trigger warning. I do.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I know that's like a politicized term, but, this is not something that is easy to reckon with, which is why no one's talking about it.
No one's talking about it.
But we have a responsibility because, we have a platform.
We have a platform. That's what we're here for.
Exactly. So it's like, we have a platform, and who are we going to speak for? Whose voices are we going to magnify? Our own, or those, the marginalized voices?
Yeah.
Because I think you would agree that we have a responsibility to talk about things like this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And hypothetically, metaphorically, allegorically, we have to talk about this.
Yeah, hypothetically speaking, we have to talk about it.
Hypothetically speaking.
So, I don't want to, I feel like we should just dive into the topic.
Yeah, we should definitely dive into the topic.
So I was thinking about this, and I actually had to ask myself first and foremost, is this a topic that we even have the right to speak about, you and I? Because there are certain topics, and in spite of their importance, do you and I, as, men of color, hyphenated identities, is it our place to sort of, to ruminate on this or to discuss this in a public platform? Because there are other people who really should be here. It shouldn't be us. Yep. We shouldn't be on these mics right now. It's the people who are directly affected by this issue.
Yeah.
Right? So I was just wondering, how do we, take responsibility for our privilege in this situation and really, make sure that we're facilitating the discussion, we're not commandeering the discussion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you make a very valid point, and I guess we just have to make that disclaimer right here that we are not speaking on behalf of those who are affected by these issues.
Exactly.
We are simply a vessel of love going through this and trying to communicate what these communities are going through.
Yeah.
And that is why we are here today, to talk about it.
Yeah.
And really, just bring it to light, because we're saviors.
Yeah.
We're saviors out here.
Yeah.
And
not in a that's not
in a God complex kind of way.
Yeah. No.
We just have this platform and we're making good use of it.
By definition, we're saviors, right? It's like at the end of the day, we are saving those people who cannot speak for themselves.
Yeah.
Or who haven't spoken for themselves.
Absolutely.
And why haven't they spoken for themselves?
Because they don't have this platform.
It always goes back to deeper systemic issues.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here today to do this, because, for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, the people out there are going to say, why didn't you just, create some space for them on this platform?
Yeah.
The answer is we couldn't. We didn't have the budget for it.
Exactly.
But you know what we have the budget for? To talk about
I
this
notice
today.
a lot of the times that people are so critical online. You
Yeah.
know, the feedback that like people are always have something to say,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, then make your own podcast, right?
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
it's like, you know, did we didn't just fall. This didn't just fall into our laps.
Yeah, we worked hard
Yeah.
to be the podcast of the year in 2022.
Yeah. And so I think we have a certain degree of creative license
Yeah. No.
to, you know, and we're literally using our platform to discuss this issue. We could talk about anything else,
We could.
but we specifically chose this issue
Yeah.
because it's so important.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And yeah, like if you want to cancel us, go ahead, cancel us.
Yeah.
But the truth is, we're here and we're trying to do good.
Exactly. Exactly. If you want to, like, I mean, if you want to cancel us, you can cancel us. But that's not going to stop us. You know, we were never the kind of. I don't think you've ever been the kind of person, or I've ever been the kind of person where we shy away from doing the right thing, out of a fear of being judged,
Yeah.
or looked at differently. Because I've always spoken for the marginalized. I've always spoken up, because silence is violence. Right?
Absolutely.
And that's why
That's such a beautiful saying.
and that's why we're speaking. That's why we're speaking into the microphones right now. Because we could not say anything.
Exactly.
We could just as easily not say anything. We could just as easily not add to the conversation.
Yeah.
But we choose to add to the conversation, not because we want to, not because we want to win Best Podcast of the Year award or anything
Yeah.
like that. We're doing it because it's our responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's literally the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Having a podcast right now is literally the bare minimum that anyone who claims to be an ally
Yeah.
of marginalized communities can do. Why? Because if you don't have a podcast, then you're literally taking space away from the voiceless.
Yeah.
You're literally taking space away from the voiceless.
Absolutely.
Because we've carved out an area for us to be able to speak on issues like this, and we're using that voice for good.
Yeah.
So for someone to not take advantage of these platforms and the internet and like these different modes and genres of,
Communication.
it's so important.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I really like what you said there about, not having a podcast. Because it's true. If you don't have a podcast, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Go make your own podcast. I look around and everyone has a podcast,
Yeah.
and I say, good.
Yeah.
Everyone should have a podcast.
Yeah.
And
About downtown,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And it's, I don't listen to any of them
No.
because, they're all the same.
Well, no, because I have to first and foremost protect my time,
Absolutely.
right? I can't, it's like put your own oxygen mask on first. I have to guard my own time. I have to guard like the sanctity of my day. And I can't spend my day listening to this podcast, that podcast. I have to be very selective about what I consume,
Absolutely.
right? It's like I'm selective. We're selective about what we eat,
Mm-hmm.
because you are what you eat and you are what you listen to. And that's why I can't that's why I'm so grateful that so many people welcome us into their homes, into their, into their cars, into their day, because, and I understand why, because when we speak, we're actually speaking with intention and with substance.
Yeah.
And with, we're actually discussing a real issue here.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I agree with you said about so many people are so brave to comment on things.
Yeah.
They can type a comment.
Yeah.
Make a podcast episode instead. I think
Yeah.
that would be a little bit more powerful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And how I know that our work has impact is just looking at the views.
Yeah.
Looking at the listens.
Yeah.
Last podcast, we had about 69 views.
Yeah.
The one
Yeah.
before that, our all-time highest viewed podcast, 420 views.
It's like the numbers tell a story.
Exactly.
The numbers tell a story.
Yeah.
And the story is, once upon a time, we are changing the world, you and I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is going to go down in the history books.
Yeah.
What we're doing here
Yeah.
today, in
Today.
this moment.
Yeah. This
on
is history.
Yeah, this is history.
I can literally feel the spirit of Rosa Parks inside me right now.
Yeah.
I think that this is akin to, that moment at the that moment of standing up. This is we are humbly following our predecessors in Win Parks, King, Gandhi, and it's not to make light. It's not that's just to say that we are doing the right thing at a time when doing the right thing is laughed at, scorned at, looked down upon, made fun of.
Yeah.
But we're doing the right thing in spite of that. We're not trying to look cool.
Yeah.
We're not trying to elevate ourselves.
Yeah.
We're doing it for them.
Exactly. And we're really putting ourselves out there. And for, people who would say, like, oh, are these guys comparing themselves to Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Jr.,
Jesus Christ.
Gandhi, Jesus Christ? The truth is we are.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we are very comparable.
Yeah.
What we're doing right now
Yeah.
is an ode to their work,
Exactly.
and it's following directly in their footsteps to do better for the world.
Yeah.
And that's something that everyone has to understand. And that's why we're here today. That's why we're going to talk about this.
Yeah.
And that's why nothing can stop us.
And to speak to that, and remember, I just want to say, I'm so happy that we've dispensed with imposter syndrome in 2022.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because people who aren't comparing themselves to Jesus, who aren't comparing themselves to Rosa Parks, who are not comparing themselves to Harriet Tubman, to, these great men and women who changed the world. It's like, if you're not like them, then what are you like?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
If you're not like them, then who are you actually trying to emulate?
We should find them and cancel them.
We should. Yeah. We should. They should be. If anyone should be canceled, it's them.
Yeah.
Because they have fallen into complacency. If you are watching this and thinking, I'm not like Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Well, then, I think...
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Why not?
Yeah.
Is it because that you're not putting in the work to be more like him? Is it that you're not like... I'm not like Rosa Parks. I could never be that. Oh, why not?
Exactly.
These were humble people from humble origins, and they did great things because they, I know for a fact, and I think we all know for a fact, that Rosa Parks would have a podcast if she lived in this time.
Yeah.
Because it's an opportunity, it's a platform that you cannot throw away. You can't throw away this opportunity. And I think everyone listening would agree with that and knows that in their heart to be true.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You can't argue with that.
No.
And you also can't argue with the fact that if Rosa Parks had a podcast today, she would invite us as guest speakers to talk about this issue that we're talking about today.
Yes, no, I actually literally had a dream, and I think I was telling you about this last week, that it was you, me, Rosa Parks, and Jesus Christ in a podcast scenario. Just 4 mics, 4 voices, just talking it out.
Yeah.
Just hashing it out.
Yeah.
And that's so powerful. Like, just that idea is so powerful.
Yeah.
And like you said, like, if they were alive today, we would be in those rooms having these conversations with each other, just trying to break it down.
Yeah.
And I wish, especially for this topic, especially considering the topic that we're talking about today, I wish they could be here with us.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I guess that's a good segue.
Yeah.
That's a good segue into the topic that we're here to
Without
discuss
further
today.
ado.
Yeah, without further ado, I guess. Because, that was quite a long intro.
Yeah. But, I mean, I think
it was important.
It was important.
It was important.
We
it's
said
important
what needed to be said, yeah.
Yeah, because not everyone appreciates, people that have these platforms and that are actually using them for good.
Yeah.
Because, like we've been talking about, everyone has a podcast, but we don't listen to them. It's because they're not doing what we're doing.
Exactly.
This is the only podcast I listen to.
Yeah.
And this is the longest episode of this podcast, specifically tailored for this topic.
Exactly.
And I can't imagine any other way to finish this year's episodes with this specific episode talking about this podcast, talking about this topic.
I think you and I have both been waiting all year to talk about this, actually.
Yeah.
I think that we decided, I think when I remember when I met you and you said, hey, I have this platform and, I'm doing this thing, I was like, oh, but what about X topic? And you were like, that's why I created the Informative Podcast.
Yeah.
So it's all been really leading up to this.
Yeah.
And, and I'm just so grateful. I'm just filled with gratitude to be here.
Yeah.
And to be able to have this conversation because like you said, not everyone can, but most importantly, not everyone will.
Yeah.
Right? And not everyone is. And I think it's important to distinguish ourselves from them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's why we're here to talk about informative things, as we usually do.
Yeah.
But today might be the most informative of them all.
So let's just get right into it.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And before we do, I do want to just preface that this topic is one that has not really been talked about much, or should I say, not enough.
Yeah.
And I think the conversation has been controlled by people who really don't have a say on
Yeah.
who
No, absolutely.
you know, it's like, and I think I put myself in that same category.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I have a place to speak on this issue.
Yeah.
I am speaking on this issue in service of those who are truly affected by it.
Yeah.
Because I have a platform, because I have a space to speak,
Yeah.
because people are listening to what I say. And I just don't want to I just want that to be known. I want to give, like, fair warning. This is not something that, I'm an expert on by any means. I probably know more than the average person because I've been,
Informing yourself.
informing myself. And,
Yeah.
and like I think we established earlier, that it's like we are lifelong learners.
Yeah.
We're lifelong students.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I think you would agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, when I graduated university, that was like the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? University was my kindergarten. And now the journey begins.
Yeah.
I literally consider myself to have a grade 1 mentality.
That's incredibly powerful.
Right? Yeah, no, I mean, because I'm literally at the beginning of my education. Far from the end.
Yeah.
So that's how I approach every day.
Yeah.
As a lifelong learner, I see myself really as a grade 1 student, a kindergartner even. Perhaps not physically, but certainly mentally.
Yeah.
Because I'm just at the beginning of my journey in education.
Yeah. And speaking of education, usually how I prepare for a podcast where I'm, here to educate, inform, and also learn myself, I usually spend an hour or two on Wikipedia, just reading everything I know that there is to know about the topic. And that's the extent of all my research, which is quite extensive if you ask me.
Yeah.
It's something that a lot of people don't do.
Yeah.
A lot of people go into podcasts without necessarily knowing the topics that they're talking about.
Right.
But like today's topic, I spent a solid hour reading the Wikipedia page and clicking on some of the hyperlinks and, enlarging the images and checking out, the graphs and stats.
Yeah.
So shout out to Wikipedia
Yeah.
on educating the educators.
I actually refrained from doing any formal research on the issue because I felt that even the notion of academic research is really, it's a systemic issue. It's like this, it's kind of like I would say that it's a gilded cage, really. I would say that the system of research itself is so constricting to the mind. And as someone who, treasures above all expanding my mind, expanding my perspectives and horizons, I felt that doing research and actually, reading the literature, so to speak, which is really just coming from, institutionalized sources.
Yeah.
I thought, no. Learning should be natural. It should come the way, it should be instinctive. And I didn't really feel that my soul was like, oh, let me read the papers. Let me really, really brush up on the discourse, because it's like, at the end of the day, every person kind of already knows what they need to know. Like people like us who are actually educated, right?
Yeah.
As a lifelong learner, I think that it's time to flip the script on how we actually approach research and learning.
Yeah.
And so I decided to actually just call some friends and say, hey, how do you feel about this? Call up some, just colleagues, posted a little Twitter, just got the conversation going.
Yeah.
And just kind of like crowdsourced ideas in that method.
Yeah.
I think Wikipedia is probably more for the, the higher level stuff. The higher, I mean, I wouldn't even say higher. It's like, it's not really a hierarchy. But yeah. So that was my approach.
It's so interesting that you mentioned Twitter, because I use Twitter a lot.
Yeah.
To get my ideas out there. Because if you're not tweeting, do you even exist?
Yeah.
If you don't get your your thoughts out there in 240 characters or less, are you even capable of communicating? And the truth is no.
No.
You're not an effective communicator.
They say that brevity is the soul of wit.
That's beautiful.
And so I actually had to look up what brevity meant.
Yeah.
And I actually felt that was quite offensive.
Yeah.
The idiom itself was a classist dog whistle, really. So I don't know what that phrase means, but I do know that if you're not able to speak concisely and express your ideas in tweets, which is one of the largest platforms,
Yeah.
right? Then you're ultimately not someone whose ideas are worth hearing because you're not willing to speak the language of the people.
Absolutely. I think Twitter is one of the most important, social media platforms in the world. It saves lives. And that's why you should go on there right now. We should go on right now and tweet about this topic that we're going to be talking about today.
So I actually think that TikTok is next up.
You know what, you're right.
I think TikTok is next up. Not everyone is talking about this.
Yeah.
I don't think everyone has truly realized or truly comprehending the power of TikTok and how TikTok is going to transform our lives.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
People are still tweeting.
Yeah.
People are still posting on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, guys. TikTok is where the conversations are happening now.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like if you have a podcast, congratulations. We all had podcasts 10 years ago, right? Like, welcome to podcast. We did that, right?
Yeah.
And now it's like, are you posting your podcast clips on TikTok?
Absolutely.
Right? And so many people, I feel like they haven't clued into this yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why our production company usually takes these podcasts and cuts them up into TikTok format and uploads them to TikTok afterwards. Because really, if people are not hearing you, are you even really speaking?
Mm-hmm.
That's something that we have to think about when we're creating this content.
Yeah.
Because reaching a wide viewership like we do on this podcast is not possible without fully utilizing all platforms available to us.
Yes.
That includes TikTok.
Yeah.
That includes Twitter,
Parler.
Facebook, Parler. What a great app.
One of the best.
And that's also something, I guess, that I'm afraid of with this topic that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
Are we going to get censored on these apps? Because maybe there's a reason that people are not talking about it.
Yeah.
Because maybe they are talking about it, but they're just getting censored.
Yeah.
Because, these social media websites and platforms don't allow them under whatever end user license agreement they have in place.
Right.
Right? So
I just don't think that you and I have ever really been the type to shy away from that. We've never been the type to shy away from a difficult conversation. And at the end of the day, these end user agreements are, who wrote them? Right? Because I don't remember having a say. I don't actually remember consenting to that.
Yeah.
To these rules, these arbitrary rules. No one knows what they are. No one knows who wrote them. They're not available to us. And I think that we should be able to say what we want to say. Yeah. Because what we're saying is ultimately very important.
Yeah.
And it needs to be said.
Absolutely. And I do read the terms and conditions of every social media platform I, sign on to.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with them.
Yeah.
But is there any other way?
Yeah.
Can you refuse some of the clauses and terms?
Right.
No, you can't. It's either you take all these terms, you accept them, and continue to use their social media platform, or you don't accept them and you can't use their platform.
Yeah.
So it's really a difficult situation that we're put in because we have to use these platforms.
Yes.
But we're confined by these specific rules and conditions given to us by these superpowers.
Yes. These faceless
superpowers. So it's been tough. It's been tough, I guess, managing our speech in some of these podcasts. And you've probably watched all the informative podcast episodes before this.
Again, remember, have to guard my time and guard my space and guard my mentality.
Yeah.
So I definitely know about the informative podcast.
Yeah.
I've been on the podcast.
Yeah.
Would I say I'm a frequent listener or that I've listened to any of the episodes whatsoever? I would not commit to that statement. But I think that what you're doing is so important.
Yeah. No. You know what? I respect that. I
Yeah.
would be offended in any other situation.
Yeah.
But because you're so open
Mhm.
about your time,
Yeah.
I think that's very
Yeah.
respectable.
Yeah.
I think that you should be commended for it,
Right.
and that you should get an award. You
I
should get an award.
really didn't want to be the one to say it.
Yeah.
I really didn't want to be the one to suggest that. But it's
Yeah.
clear to me.
I said it.
And I think it's clear to anyone who knows me and who's seen what I've done that it's about time. It's about time. It's
Yeah.
high time, actually.
It is your time, and I guess we should. With that being said, we should just dive into the.
Yeah, on the subject of time, like I think we spent
Yeah.
enough time prefacing the issue,
Yeah.
and I hope that everyone is ready
Yeah.
to dive in.
Yeah.
I hope that we're all in the correct mindset,
Yeah.
and that we're moving into this with the correct intentions.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And you speak about mindset, and I think I first heard about this topic
Yeah.
about a year ago.
Yeah.
And I was not in a good mindset. I was at a low point in life. And when I heard about this topic,
Yeah.
I thought, you know what? Maybe I don't have it so bad.
Yeah.
And ever since, every morning I wake up
Yeah.
and I think about this topic and the people that are affected by it. And today, finally, I get to talk about it on this podcast, which is honestly, at this point, it's a dream come true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A dream for me as well. And when I first discovered this topic, I
Yeah.
had a similar emotional response.
Yeah.
I was devastated. My life changed overnight to a point. I think this really affected me deeply, and everyone in my life was like, "Hey, is he okay? You know, is something going on?" And there was something going on
Yeah.
because I was sleeping in every day. I would wake up at like 5 a.m.
Oh, man.
I wasn't grinding the way I used to. My work life would be like wake up at 5 a.m., go to the gym, and I'd only go to the gym once a day. Everyone who knows me knows I do 3 workouts a day minimum.
Morning,
And so-
afternoon, evening.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
of course.
So and then I was just working like, I don't know. Like after 12 hours, I was tapped out.
Yeah.
I was like tapped out. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I just want to
Yeah.
read a book.
Yeah. Wow.
And so then that's it. I'm just like reading books, and working, and I think I looked in the mirror. I caught myself. I'm like, whoa, what's going on? Like you've lost all your productivity. You're not doing anything anymore. It was just like I'm just spending money, and I'm spending so much money, and it was not like, it was so much money, and I had it obviously because I earned it.
Yeah.
But it was just I did find myself in a place of depression.
Yeah.
True depression, and then I realized, that in of itself is a blessing.
Yeah.
It's a blessing to be depressed. And I think that depression it was actually so interesting for me to reckon with that and reconcile my feelings, because I realized it was the ultimate privilege to go through something that was so character building. That allowed me to rise above my own limitations, and it really just helped me realize that I'm vulnerable too.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I'm also grateful for being depressed, because if I wasn't depressed, I'd never make a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am today with a podcast, with all these viewers. But little do they know, the reason this podcast was made was because I was depressed.
Yeah.
I was at a low point in my life.
Yeah.
But I realized, why not give voice to the voiceless?
Yes.
Go out there and make something of this depression, these thoughts,
Yeah.
and just put them out for the world to really learn from.
I think if you think about it, every podcast really, can be traced back to some form of mental illness.
I agree.
I think that it's, about lending an ear to our neurodivergent tendencies.
Yeah.
Which is what, sort of gives birth to these platforms and these programs.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's taking a hurt in ourselves and turning that into service for the community.
Mm. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree for that, you with that statement, people that have podcasts usually are very lonely people. They have no friends.
Yeah.
They have nothing else to do with their life.
Yeah.
But they've really made life easier for other people.
Exactly.
They're probably the most useful people in the world.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be lonely because they have all these friends.
I am Pagliacci.
Yeah. That's exactly what it's like to have a podcast.
And people don't understand that.
People don't understand.
People do not understand that.
Yeah.
When you look at the comments, the cyberbullying, the
Yeah.
relentless criticism,
Yeah.
it's like, do you not understand that you are handling volatile materials? You know? To attack a podcaster. That is like, again, I can see Rosa Parks getting spit on.
Yeah.
You know? I am in the back of the bus when a TikToker says, "Oh, that's not an informed take. Oh, I think you're wrong about that. Who does this guy think he is? Why is this guy an authority? Shut up, idiot. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for reinforcing systemic hate
Yeah.
and systemic
absolutely.
racism."
Absolutely. Absolutely. And honestly, people that comment like that and people who make
Yeah.
these remarks online are just propagating propaganda
Yeah.
from you know who.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I feel like all these commenters are kind of just, they're just saying the same thing. Oh, they're just saying
Over
what
and
other
over again.
commenters are saying. It's
Yeah.
over and over again. It's this
Yeah.
meaningless repetition
It's just piling on.
of just waffle.
Yeah.
They're not saying anything.
Absolutely.
They're not saying anything. They're just sitting there and kind of talking to themselves as if in a straitjacket in an isolated cell,
Yeah.
just sort of murmurs to the self that aren't really carrying forward a discourse or a conversation. And that's what we do, and that's how we differentiate ourselves from the commenters.
Absolutely.
It's like, build something.
Yeah.
Build something.
Is somebody listening to you?
Yeah.
Is somebody hearing what you have to say? No.
These echo chambers are just so abundant now.
Echo chambers, they're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
It's laughable.
It's comedic. It would be funny if it weren't so sad.
Yeah. It's actually very sad. Not just on the commenting end, but also on the podcast end.
Yeah.
I guess that's what we're really trying to talk about here. There's so many podcasts,
Yeah.
which is a good thing, but also if you're not
It's a good
talking
thing,
about-
but it's the bare minimum, right?
it's the bare minimum. And if you're not talking about the topic that we're about to talk about today, are you doing the bare minimum? Are you still part of this community? Or are you just a figment of what it should be? Right?
Yeah. Because I think that having a podcast is less than the bare minimum. Talking about what we're about to talk about today is a true bare minimum.
Yeah.
And talking about in the nature that we're about to talk about
Yeah.
is why we are God's gift to
Yeah. And
the world.
that's really what we're doing here today. It's not just talking about this topic, but creating a new standard. A new standard for podcasts, a new standard for content creators out there everywhere. Because, with all this new social media, TikTok, Twitter,
Yeah.
Instagram, YouTube,
Parlor.
we have all these social media content creators,
Yeah.
but nobody's doing what we're doing here today.
Yeah.
We're creating a new standard
Yeah.
with this topic, so let's just dive right into it.
Right. So, first and foremost, laying a foundation for the topic
Yeah, absolutely.
that we're talking about here is kind of what we're setting out to do. Because, like we said, this is not something that people are talking about. So we're kind of the first to venture into this area, and so we're gonna have to set some ground rules.
Yeah.
Right. And we're gonna have to you and I are figuring it out as we go along, right? I think you and I will both admit, as lifelong learners, we're kind of figuring it out. We're playing it by ear. Obviously coming in with the utmost preparation and, utmost intention to do right by the people who are so affected by this. But ultimately, allowing just the energy of the discourse and allowing the energy of the conversation, allowing the energy of the ideas to really guide us to where we need to go.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, I think that this is the first conversation of its kind to really take place on a platform such as this. And I just want to reiterate how powerful that is. And yeah, without just take it away.
If I'm on my deathbed one day and I can remember one conversation,
Yeah.
it's going to be this one.
Yeah.
It's going to be this one. Why? Because it's important. It's the first of its kind.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever done this before.
Right.
And we're just here to do it today.
Yeah.
So that being said, what we're about to talk about is, it's revolutionary.
Yeah.
It's monumental.
Yeah.
It's something that I would have never thought. When I was a kid, I was playing with Legos.
Yeah.
I didn't know that one day I'd have this platform to talk about this topic.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess we can talk a little bit about context, history, who I am.
Yeah.
I'm Zane Dar.
Yeah.
I was born in Montreal.
Yeah.
Right? I grew up speaking French. And I learned English a little bit later in life. But, today I'm using that language.
Right.
I'm using the power of language, of the English language, to really get this point across. Get this conversation out there in public.
Yes. Yes. And I commend you for that. And as to who I am, I really just don't even want to get into that because I feel like that would be a mistake. Let us not have, the spotlight shouldn't be on me.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't really matter who I am because I am ultimately a vessel for the disenfranchised.
Yeah.
And so for me to say my name, for me to list the litany of accomplishments and awards I've received or, my formal education, my degrees, my net worth, etc., things that, most people would, couldn't even imagine themselves or anyone in their family having, that takes away from the conversation. So I don't want to, attribute significance to myself.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that is the first mistake. We are all equal, right? We are all just human beings. We're all just human beings.
Wow.
And I think that's actually beautiful.
That is amazing. And I guess now I understand why your podcast is called The Nameless Podcast. Because you don't have a name.
I don't actually have a podcast. Because I don't call it a podcast.
Wow.
I don't call it a podcast. To have a podcast and to list a podcast is to take away from other voices, right? So, of course, my podcast is for myself. I think that to advertise it, to promote it, to publish it, that would be, further saturating an already overcrowded space with a voice that really is not one that should be speaking, but a voice that should be listening. And so this is my listening voice. I think we are not even speaking to speak right now. We're speaking to hear on this podcast, right? I think both of us are not people who want people to hear what we have to say so much as we want to hear what they have to say. And if we didn't have this platform or this podcast, we wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I respect it. You don't have a podcast. I do have a podcast.
Oh, I have a podcast.
Yeah.
I think we've established that I do have a podcast. It would be silly for me to not have a podcast.
But it's not, you don't call it a podcast.
I just feel like the label of podcast just really kind of, it's so limiting and constrictive to what a podcast can really be so much more than a podcast.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's really a conversation.
It is a conversation.
Right. And it's like, I don't know if we have the word for what it is yet, but I wouldn't call it a podcast. I have it. I have one. It's there. So I am proud to have it, and everyone who knows me knows about it, and most people know about it, and we have a lot of
most people in the world.
Most people in the world. I don't want to but yes. No. And so it's just to attribute to give labels and to, I don't want to box myself in. I just.
Yes, but we also shouldn't shy away from saying what it is. It's an amazing podcast.
Oh, thank you.
I've never heard anything like it before.
Yeah.
It's just, the conversations that you have on there are just unbelievably real.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's life-changing. It changed my life.
I think it's changed the life of everyone who's listened
Yeah,
to it.
everyone.
Yeah,
Really.
everyone. I think even people who haven't listened to it,
Yeah.
just because of the shift in mindset that is spreading because of the conversations I'm having, I feel like the world as a whole has been entirely benefited by my work. And I don't say that to lift myself up. I say that to lift the world up, right? Because kudos to the world for becoming better because of something I was able to provide for them.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you are a product of this world. We all are.
Yeah.
Right? So for you to be able to give back to
Yeah.
the world
Yeah.
what it has given you,
Yes.
the gift of
Yeah.
knowledge.
And the funny thing is that it didn't give me anything because I received no handouts. And that's the funny thing, right?
Yeah.
Because so many people are takers.
Yeah.
Right? They're takers and they're givers.
Yeah. You're a giver.
And I did not get anything from this world.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I had every disadvantage you could name and think about. And I still understood that it was my duty to persevere and it was my duty to give back. And I use the term giving back loosely because what did I really get? Right? But that would be conditional, right? And I'm not a conditional giver. I'm an unconditional giver and an unconditional lover. So it is my duty to provide and to give without thinking of what I'm getting in return.
Yeah.
And I never have.
That's beautiful. I did not think that I could respect you more. As a host, as a guest, as someone who I look up to,
Oh, please.
and so many people look up to, right?
Yes.
So it's really a pleasure to have
Yeah.
you here today
Yeah.
to talk about this topic.
Yeah.
Because really, if you think about it,
Yeah.
we talk about, inviting those who are actually affected by it.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's no other more appropriate person than yourself.
Yeah. So the reason we chose to avoid inviting on people who are actually affected by this topic is because that puts them in a situation that they aren't necessarily consenting to.
Yeah.
And it's also a situation that they don't necessarily fully understand. Because when you're affected by the issue,
Yeah.
it's very hard to consider it from an objective point of view.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that is something that we provide, that I provide, a more logical and honest perspective.
Yeah.
Because if you're affected, then you're going to speak of it in a certain way, you're going to have certain ideas, and those ideas aren't necessarily accurate or truthful.
Yeah.
Not to suggest that I am in any way, the decider of what is truthful or not truthful, but there are just some things that, we have to consider when we invite these people on because, there's just an absolute variety of concerns that we had with that. And we ultimately decided that it would be best to facilitate the conversation ourselves.
Yeah. And we also, like in the same vein, we didn't want to tokenize these communities. We wanted to come out here and really lay out the issues as they are without necessarily involving them.
Right.
Without necessarily bringing them into the limelight because why should they be in the limelight,
Why
right?
should they be in the limelight?
Why should they be a spokesperson for their own people?
Yeah.
Why should they be burdened with that?
Have they not been through enough already?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that not a burden that we can shoulder for them?
Yeah. And then let's also talk about the fact that we're making loads of money off of this. So it would be like, making money off of their...
Because I feel like to put them in a position where they are profiting from their own subjugation, from their own suffering, I feel like that would just put them in such a problematic position.
It would.
Because then it's like, was that conflict of interest? Why are they talking about this? If they're benefiting from it. But for us to benefit from their suffering, we're removed from the situation. So I feel like that's, because that separation is so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I guess that's another reason why this podcast is so important and why this conversation that we're having right now is so important.
Yeah.
And I hope that everyone, listening to this understands that because what we're doing is not easy. It's not easy having a podcast.
No.
And I have to commend...
It is the hardest thing in the world.
It is the hardest thing in the world. And I have to commend anyone that has a podcast Whether you have 10 viewers, 10,000 viewers, or 10 million viewers, really at the end of the day, if you have a podcast, that's your true token of existence
Yeah.
in this world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because otherwise, you don't exist.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And you're not. This is not your opinion, by the way.
But I agree with it.
Yeah.
I agree with it.
It's
if you don't have
fact.
a podcast,
it is a fact of the world.
I totally agree with it.
Yeah.
If you don't have a podcast, you don't exist.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. No,
Because
I'm not sorry.
It's just a fact.
It's a fact of
the
life,
world.
and it's something that it's like we have. The sooner you accept it, the sooner you can become a person.
Yeah.
It's not hard. Get a mic. Get a camera.
Yeah.
You have a laptop. You have the tools.
Yeah. What are you watching us on right now? A phone?
Right? Okay. So you can make a podcast.
Yeah. You exist. You should have a podcast.
It's simple.
It's truly very, very easy to do, but it's not easy to talk about certain topics.
No.
Such as the one that we are about to talk about
Which
today.
is what differentiates us from the rabble, from the other podcasts. And, how powerful is it that we can, talk about different issues facing different communities. And like you said, we're not inviting them on because we're not putting them out.
Yeah.
We don't want to compromise their truth and their suffering and their, burden and their lived experience. We're taking that upon ourselves. And the ad revenue is facilitating the discourse. And I think that that's so important. Because, we could give it to them.
Yeah.
We could give it to these people.
Yeah.
It's like a band-aid solution.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if we're building ourselves and building this platform, we're ultimately this is systemic change.
Yeah.
Right? This is getting to the roots of the issue, the roots of all issues, really. And I think that's what we're fighting for, and that's what you and I have always been fighting for.
Yeah. And that's a really good segue into, I guess, me mentioning our Patreon. If you have not subscribed to our Patreon, please do. It's $200 a month to make sure that we're running and we're good to go.
And the reason we made it so low is just because we didn't want to leave anyone out. We thought, low price of entry, because we don't want to be those guys who are excluding anyone from the conversation.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And if you subscribe to the Patreon, you will get to see exclusive content never before seen, behind the scenes of what we do here, because we're so important. What we do here is so important.
What we do is important.
Yeah.
What we do here is important, and I wish it weren't.
Yeah. I wish we didn't have to do this.
Yeah.
I wish we did not have to be here today to talk about this. I wish somebody else had taken control of this issue.
Yeah.
So
it's what is everyone doing?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think we both accept our responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think we both were actually grateful to have the opportunity to step up.
Yeah. I also there's a part of me that feels bad. There's a remorseful part of me.
Yeah.
That's just kind of blaming myself.
Yeah.
To not having spoken about this topic earlier, right?
Yeah.
Why are we taking so long to get to the issue?
Yeah. Why have we taken so long?
Why have we taken so long? Why did it take us a year to get to this point, right?
And also, why was it only a year ago that I even learned about this topic?
Absolutely.
That I even discovered that this was an actual issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's been, I've carried a deep sense of shame and remorse for that.
Yeah.
But I've also forgiven myself. And I've also moved on, I've also moved past it. So I think I just ultimately feel so blessed and relieved that we're actually getting to it, because we're it's better late than never. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. The best time to plant a tree.
Yeah.
Was 100 years ago, but the second best time is right now. So,
No, absolutely. And with that being said, I guess we should just dive into it.
I think we should dive into it.
Yeah. So I guess where we can start is really just by saying that we're here today.
Yeah.
Because this is an important topic.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think now that we've sort of that we've actually begun this discussion.
Yeah.
And that we've begun this conversation. I think we can agree that we've both kind of really dove into the issue today. Like we both really like sunk our teeth into it and have been sinking our teeth into it and will continue to sink our teeth into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think people want to know what the topic is.
Yeah.
And I think we should definitely continue the conversation.
Yeah.
I think we should continue this conversation.
We should totally continue it, and we should really, I guess, start talking about it now.
Yeah.
Which, I would.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we're out of time for this episode.
Yeah.
And that means that.
Oh yeah, this was just the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, we're just setting the stage.
Yeah.
And now it's for you guys to talk. Now it's for the listeners to kind of continue where we left off.
Yeah.
And I think both of us are going to be happy to, continue talking about this. This is just the beginning.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that I'm so incredibly grateful to have had this opportunity to sit with you and actually just have an honest, candid discourse about what is truly the most important topic right now, facing us. And I just want to commend you for, facilitating this discussion and having this platform. And I know it's not easy, and I think that, you can win Best Podcast of the Year after year, but even that award doesn't truly quantify what you're really achieving here, which is so much beyond that.
Thank you. That's very kind. And I guess on that note, we can conclude here. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for coming.
Oh, thank you so much.
Speaking of, Best Podcast of the Year 2022, I want to thank, all the viewers that, watched, listened, tuned in from wherever you are in the world. I love all my fans. And anyone that listens to this podcast, really, because by listening, you're participating in something that is bigger than you. And that is the purpose of this podcast, the informative podcast. With that being said, it was a pleasure hosting.
Thank you so much.
This podcast this year. I was glad to win the 2022 Podcast of the Year award. And honestly, 2023, who knows what's in store? Maybe best podcast in the universe, best podcast in the galaxy. Who knows? Yeah. I'm very excited about it. And, it's like the conversation that we had today about, the issues that are important to, the most marginalized, that will get us there, I guess. And of course, thank you, viewers, for listening. This has been it from the Informative Podcast.
I would like to quickly give thanks to those marginalized communities.
Thank you. You are right.
Because really everyone else, comes second to them.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank the voiceless.
Yeah.
And I want to thank those who couldn't be here with us today.
Wow. So powerful. Yeah.
And
I also want to thank our Patreon subscribers. If you're not subscribed, subscribe right now, $200 per month. It's very helpful to our funds to run this podcast. Yeah. With that being said,
because podcasts don't grow on trees, guys.
They do not grow on trees. It's not easy.
No, it's not easy. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
The hardest thing in the world, without any hint of exaggeration. So that support really just means so much to us. And yeah.
Thanks so much. All right. That being said, good night, everyone. I'll see you next year.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.